can we go through your 4 types of knowing?
Sure.
And understand how, explain how the hierarchy of those fits together.
So the one we're most familiar with, as I said, is propositional knowing. This is the knowing that is the vehicle of it is belief, are propositions. So I know that cats are mammals, and I either believe it or I don't believe it. And then the normativity of that is truth or falsity. That's my sense of realness. And there's a form of memory that goes with that. It's called semantic memory. This is where you know that cats are mammals, right? But there's procedural knowing. This is knowing how to do something. This is knowing how to catch a ball. This is knowing how to ride a bike. This is knowing how to kiss somebody that you love, and knowing how to do it depending on what kind of love you have for them, right? And so that's not about beliefs. It's about skills. When you're done that, you don't have a theory. You have expertise. And it's not about true or falsity. It's about power. It's about how apt your skill is, how powerful it can intervene. We have different senses of realness. Yes, we have the conviction of truth, but we also have the sense of power is another sense of realness. And of course, we have a different kind of memory that goes with that. And it's brilliantly in psychology called procedural memory, because it gives, right? Then we have perspectival knowing. This is knowing what it's like to be here now in this state of mind. I know what it's like for me to be me here now in a sober, reflective state of mind. This is what it's like. This is what my salience landscape is like so I know what it's like to be here now in this state of mind. And that gives me, it doesn't give me a theory, it doesn't even give me a skills. It gives me the situational awareness that tells me which skills I should apply or acquire. But that's dependent on me ultimately being, I didn't give you the sense of realness there. The sense of realness is, we know this from VR work, virtual reality. It's the sense of presence. It's the sense of being in the game, right? Like, I'm really present. And that's why we crave for that, because it's what gives us our sense of realness, right? And it's not the same thing as verisimilitude. You can get that sense of presence in a game like Tetris that has very little to do with how the world is really set up. It has more to do with, again, this optimal gripping thing I was talking about earlier. Below the perspectival, like if I'm going to have situational awareness, I have to be fitted to my environment. There have to be affordances. That's the level of the participatory knowing. That's the level at which evolutionary biology, cultural history, and the dynamics of my ongoing cognition are shaping my identity, shaping the identity of things so that they fit together in an adaptive manner. So what's most ancient and most fundamental ontologically is the participatory, because if you don't have that, the other ones can't work. And then once we get beings that plausibly have consciousness, you have perspectival and procedural, right? With us, we get this weird thing where I can make noises come out of my face hole and it creates thoughts in your mind. We get language and we have to justify statements, and we get justification systems, as Greg Enriquez says, around propositions. And we get really fixated on that as that's where we are, and that's where all knowing is, and that's where all reasoning is, and this, of course, this leads to something you mentioned earlier. You get the pseudo-religion of ideology. You get that what I need is a set of propositions, and I have to be really clear on what all those and what I believe and what my belief system is. And the problem with ideology and belief systems and people who want to understand everything just as political is, and this is precisely why it's pseudo-religious, is it ignores the procedural, the perspectival, and the participatory. And if you pay attention to traditional religions until maybe the Protestant Reformation, they cared a lot more about those other P's than they did about the propositions, right? They cared much, much more about knowing how and knowing what it's like to be, and right. And so the participatory knowing, right, that gives you affordances, gives you a sense of belonging. When it goes wrong, you can fall into addiction. And like I said, that has its own kind of memory. Perspectival knowing has episodic memory. This is your ability to remember situations in like a scene. And participatory knowing has that weird sense of memory. We sometimes forget that it's a sense of memory. The sense of memory we call our sense of self, our sense of identity. And that also is in a different place in your brain. And right. So those are all the kinds of knowing, the relationships they have with each other, the normative standards they're judged by, their result, the vehicles that they operate in, and the different kinds of memory. And so, like, you have to think about all the different ways in which we're connecting to the world. And most of the meaning-making machinery is not at the propositional level. It's at the level of the other three.